Welcome to the Redacted Apostate. My name is Nicole.
And I'm Carl.
And today we're going to talk about the Kevin, Franke, Jodi, Hildebrant, and Ruby Franke evidence that was released earlier this week. So by the time this podcast comes out, a lot of this information will have already been released. It's pretty enlightening. They had said because they both pled guilty, the evidence would all be released. And the evidence is some documentation,
Right.
I don't know what they call those lapel cameras from when they were arrested.
Body cams.
Mm-hmm. The police interrogations of pretty much everyone, and then prison phone calls is what was released.
Okay.
So you get to see from the arrest all the way to when they pled guilty.
Mm-hmm.
And we still don't know how long each of them are going to serve because they left that up to the parole board. The judge didn't give them an actual sentence.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
So there's two pieces of information that I found the most interesting. And one is the Kevin Franke interrogation. And this is
the second
one.
Yeah. So is this the husband?
This is the husband.
Okay.
Of Ruby Franke. And
because
then
everybody knows Ruby Franke, but we're not really. That's like the first time I've heard his name actually.
Yeah.
Well, Ruby Franke's husband.
Yeah, his name is Kevin, which is interesting you say that because we'll get into kind of what he said during his interrogation. And his first interrogation with the police was videotaped.
Right.
And his second one was just audio, but his second one was a whole different tune than his first one.
Really?
And Ruby Franke, when she was first arrested versus some of her calls towards the end. Now, most people on the internet, like we said in the last podcast, were hating on her. My attitude towards her is a little bit different.
Right.
Not quite as hatred, but it still reminds me of the Monty Python skit. Do you remember that Monty Python skit where there was a murderer that had just been convicted and he's up on the stage and he's, I'm so sorry I killed all those people.
I would like to personally apologize to not only the members of the jury, but to the judge and to the lawyers as well. I'm so very sorry.
You did a great job. And that's exactly what she was like the Monty Python skit.
Right.
I don't know if she had ever seen that skit. I mean, it's really hard to know because like you could do those. That would be a fun YouTube video to do those side by side. The Monty Python skit and the Ruby Franke.
Right.
I don't even know I don't know any legal terms, but when she pled guilty, what she said.
Yeah, because it's not sentencing.
No.
So, I mean, it would just be entering your plea.
An arraignment plea? I don't know.
Yeah,
There's
no idea.
those like big legal words. I don't know what any of those means.
I don't even get the little legal words, to be honest with you. So the big ones are definitely not up my alley.
There is some hysterical stuff that came out of this.
Really?
I mean, it is so funny. It's completely disturbing, but there are parts that are just like on the floor laughing. They're so funny.
Oh my God.
So Kevin Franke, when he was first interviewed by police, he said, oh, Jodi's so wonderful. She would never hurt anybody. She's so great. And then the second interview, he outlines his progression in the cult. He even uses the word cult.
Wow.
He called her a cult leader, Jodi.
So hold on. Not his wife, but
Jodi.
Okay.
Right.
Which tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was I think the big kind of surprise about this whole trial was it's not how far she went, because I think when you first heard about the facts of this case, you were like, oh, she was this influencer on YouTube and stuff like that and took it too far. Mm-hmm. Like it was this progression in her own mind, and that the two of them together were kind of feeding off of each other. That was kind of my first initial thoughts. And I never thought, oh, this is indoctrination and grooming or whatever you want to call it. And then once that came out, it was a big shock.
Right. So we always talk about what does it take for somebody to join a cult? Now, Kevin Franke, he's an educated man. He's an engineer. He taught at BYU.
Okay.
So he's a smart man. He defers to
On
his
paper,
wife,
yeah.
right? He defers to his. He even said during the interview, "I'm a smart man. I don't know how I fell for this." And I think a lot of people who join cults feel that way. Exactly the way he was expressing himself.
Right. And you get into that shame and that guilt so that you try to justify it in your own mind, which is probably what he was doing on the first interview.
Right.
Was still in the justification. No, I'm not in a cult. No. And then
she's great.
And then once that wool is kind of lifted off the eyes, you're like, oh,
yeah,
I need to tell everything now.
Right. And he did. So
good on him too.
Yeah. So it started in his testimony. It started in 2018, 2019. He wasn't really too sure when it was started, right. But it was around that time.
Do you remember the time that you were indoctrinated by a cult?
Yeah. Well, it goes back further because this is back to how smart people join cults, but that people come with the right message at the right time when you're vulnerable. So what had happened previously to that was Jodi had this, or no, not Jodi, sorry. Ruby Franke had this YouTube channel, this, I guess, influencer, I don't know. She had some kind of a channel. I'd never even heard of it, never even seen it. It's very geared towards moms or Mormons.
Mormon moms. Yeah.
And because she's attractive and she's well put together, she got a lot of following.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of kids. I think there was 8 kids or 7 kids. I don't know, the Mormon family, they're kids. And multitude of kids. So she was documenting their life together. And then it all kind of came out where the son, they had him sleeping on the floor. Remember, he was in a previous podcast we talked about, they'd sent the son away to one of those wilderness re-education camps. Right. And so people started paying attention to what she was doing and how she was treating her son. Now, so they even called CPS at the time, but they never did anything at that point. And CPS is Child Protective Services here in the United States. So they were at this critical point emotionally because they were being canceled.
Right.
So she was losing financially and emotionally, being canceled, and that's the time that she met Jodi.
But there was already
that inclination. So there was already that inclination towards children are evil, children need to be taught, children need to be obedient, children, that whole train of thought that we talked about in the last episode.
I hate that term. I hate the term children should need to be obedient. It skeeves me out. So she was being canceled and losing money financially. She meets Jodi, and he said in the interview that he never felt their marriage had any issues. He was happy, but apparently she felt their marriage had issues. And then she went and saw Jodi, and Jodi reinforced to her that was one of the problems, that the reason why she was being canceled was because the world couldn't handle the real message that they needed to really train children, and that her marriage was one of the reasons why she's being canceled. And she was being punished by God, essentially, is what was happening. So at that point, they started getting involved in Jodi's movement and her therapy, but really it was a religious movement of this belief system. Right.
And they were brought in by friends of theirs who were also part of this little group. They put him in a men's group.
When you say he, you're talking about the husband.
The husband, Kevin Franke.
Kevin. Okay.
Yeah. So he joined this men's group, and he knew it was wrong from the beginning. He said in the beginning, this is a bunch of man haters. But he was peer pressured, and he was so devoted to his wife.
Right.
And I don't know if she was a high controlling person also, because this guy doesn't seem to have a backbone at all. He really he was so enamored with her.
Could it also be background in Mormonism too?
No, because in Mormonism,
It's usually the opposite.
The man is the ruler of
true.
the house. So it's very unusual that he would be so, I don't even know, pussy whipped?
Yeah.
Like, such a horrible word, but I don't even know what the word is. Because
malleable?
He just would bend over backwards. He just agreed to whatever she did.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever she said, he agreed to.
Yeah.
And joining this group, he just, even though he intellectually knew that this was wrong, he went along with it.
I wonder if there was some self-esteem issues there. Like, nobody else is going to want to be with me, so I need to do whatever it takes to stay with this person.
I don't know. It's a recurring theme through the whole investigation.
Really?
Yeah, through this whole discussion. So they get involved with her, and this is where crazy meets. This is where the rubber hits the road, because it is like crazy. So there's these things called the pen papers. This is so Mormon. This is like this whole story is like so Mormon. It's just makes me ugh.
Pen papers.
They're called pen papers. And what these pen papers are, it's a Jodi, Ruby Franke, and another woman who's named Pam. I forget her last name. Pam something or other. Who I'm so curious who this woman is. I think I was telling you.
They didn't bring it up. Oh, that's who you're talking about. Yes.
This woman. So this woman is the president of Jodi's organization.
Okay.
So these three women would lock themselves in a room for hours and transcend to talk to God and come out with these pen papers.
Oh my gosh.
But it's so crazy. The first question he asks the investigators, have you found the pen papers? And they're like, I don't know. And I saw a picture of where they did have them, but I don't know if they found anything on the inside.
Yeah.
But I don't think that those have been released. So if anyone is listening to this, and they can put in the comments a link to the pen papers, because I'm dying to read those. So the three of them would lock themselves in a room, ignoring children. He would be responsible for taking care of the children.
And we're talking about 3 Mormon women.
3 Mormon women.
And so how many children do you think were in that house at one time?
Yeah, who knows?
That poor guy.
He was the
like 50 children
right.
hanging from the ceilings.
Yeah. Well, the 3 of them are in a bedroom communing with God or whatever. I mean, it's so gross. And they were creating these papers, and which would later become scripture.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're part of the Mormon faith, that's part of the doctrine, right?
Mm-hmm.
If your faith revolves around someone pulling scriptures out of their ass, then it sets up everybody can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And if it sets up that anybody can be a prophet, it's like this whole religion, this cult is around, we're going to spin off even crazier cults.
Yeah.
Like they did everything in their power to make sure that people could go crazy in this and just go off on a tangent.
Yeah.
Because what we're teaching you is that your word is God. Your word, you are a prophet. You are also the ruler of everybody that's underneath you, all your children, and you can marry more of them. So it's just like, not only is it you can influence your family, but you can influence all the other subfamilies too it's like.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. So they would lock themselves up and write these pen papers. And this was some of the comments were so funny, because this is where Jodi would dream in these sessions that she was walking on the beach with Jesus. And I just imagine like long walks on the beach with Jesus. Like, let's date. I like long walks on the beach with Jesus.
I like pina coladas.
It's like, what the heck? Or that she had a lion that she used to ride named Charles. There's a joke in there somewhere. I just like, it's like a boom boom.
Yeah,
there is a
I'll
joke.
figure it out later.
There is a joke in there.
Do you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of in the pagan community, people marrying deities. Do you remember that was a big thing? Like,
Oh yeah.
they would actually have staged marriages to Loki.
Oh right,
and,
right.
and Odin and things like that. Yeah, that's what it reminds me of. Is exactly that.
Well, okay, so what's even weirder than her long walks on the beach with Jesus?
But at one point, was there only one set of footprints and Jesus wasn't walking with her? And then she realized that Jesus was just carrying her?
Yeah. Okay, so, well, I don't know. She's involved in this weird three-way. She's in a thruple with Jesus.
Oh my God, don't use that
She's
term.
in a thruple with Jesus, Jodi, and Satan because she claimed that she was a bride of Satan. Like she would have, and this is according to Kevin in his testimony, that she would have visions or she would be possessed and she was the bride of Satan. And it's like, what the heck? You are following this woman who you saw being possessed by Satan, who has long walks on the beach with Jesus. Mm-hmm. It's like, what is going on? Like, at some point, you have to step, but that's not. By that point, he was already 100% in.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this whole story is really convoluted and crazy. I think it's anytime you get involved in a cult, it gets that way. It gets kind of convoluted and crazy. So it's really hard to tell you the story in a linear, logical manner because there's so many aspects to this story.
And we've had that discussion before with our other topics, is that there's no one way for you to get into a cult. It's not like someone just comes up to you and says, hey, you should join. And you go, yes, and you're sold. It's faceted and, there's all these different layers that take place for you to join. So it's not just one event. And I think that's what's so difficult about placing an emphasis on how do you not go down this route, because it's like, well, there's a million different ways it can happen. And all it takes is, 15 or 20 or 100 of those to kind of adjust your thinking.
Right. So in their case, what from his testimony was that they were in this emotionally vulnerable state from being canceled. She came along with the message, and Jodi saw them as a cash cow.
Yeah.
She saw them as a way to make money and a way to take over that viewership, which she did not have.
Right.
So Ruby Franke had 1 million subscribers or whatever, how many, and that was a huge audience that Jodi didn't have.
Right.
So she figured out a way to capitalize on that, and she used that. And she used Kevin as a way to stay compliant. It was really interesting what
do you mean by that?
Okay, so I think, and financially, they were trying to get to the bottom of the finances, and they couldn't really do that in this investigation. But from the way that it appeared, is that Kevin was a part owner in the their YouTube space, and what she did was she divided the two of them. Separated the two of them, separated Kevin, made him, told him he needed to join this men's group, and then had the men's group ostracize him.
Wow.
He got caught in the classic loop where he could never gain her favor, and everyone just piled on him.
Yeah.
Because no matter what he did, he never got favored because she was deliberately trying to separate them.
Oh, yeah.
She was sleeping. They moved him to another part of the house. So they were separated in the house.
Hell.
They moved him to another separate part of the house. And then Jodi and Ruby were sleeping together. Jodi literally took his place in the bed, and he was sleeping somewhere else in the house.
Wow.
And then
Jesus.
And he kept trying. He was so acquiescent and so compliant,
Mhm.
so saying, I want to do whatever, tell me what you want and I will do it. And she essentially said, turn over the business to me. Sign all the papers, turn over the business to me. She was trying to sell the house. He turned over all the cars, the deeds to the cars to
Holy
her.
shit.
And then part of the equation there too is that the investigator said, we have this bag of money, this $80,000. And he's like, I don't know whose money this is, where'd this money come from? And apparently Ruby had emptied out their account, put it all in cash. And now the lawyer had it. And the investigators are like, whose money is this? And Kevin's like, I don't even care.
Wow.
At that point, he's like, I don't even care. Whatever.
Jesus.
So Jodi strategically saw them as a way to get her message out and a way to make more money
Mm-hmm.
and be in complete control because the way she divided the two of them.
Yeah.
And then here's this man who said, I will do anything to get my family back. And he didn't see his family for a year. So that's a little bit this weirdness too, because I was watching a lawyer commentating on this about some of this evidence. And he said there's nothing that would separate me from my kids. The thing is that he's never been in a cult.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you cannot describe the mental power that these people have over you. Mm-hmm. And your desire to gain favor in the leader is so strong that I can see it happening. And cult leaders do this all the time. They separate the men and the women. They separate the husbands and the wives. And it's just to control
family members. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So nothing would ever separate me from my kids. And people are saying, oh, yeah, he's guilty of child abuse. Maybe. We just don't know because he didn't see his kids for a year. It's but when you're in that high control situation, you're caught in this loop. And he tried to describe it, but he didn't have the words to describe.
I don't know many people that would have the words to describe that.
Yeah. It was just a cycle. And again, he was saying, I'm a smart guy. How did I end up in this cycle? Because they were in this vulnerable situation, and here comes along this person
who had answers.
And
I mean, if you look at what occurred, she did.
Mm-hmm.
Like they started being successful, right? I'm assuming that she lost a lot of followers, but then started to gain them back, like after the canceling.
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't, because then they went to join this company called Connections. That was Jodi's company, and then this Pam person who I'm really
want to know who this is.
I just want to know who this person is. This Pam person who was the president. So it was the three of them creating these scriptural documents, these prophecies, and blah 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 blah.
Right.
And something I wrote down here, which is really interesting. She would say to Kevin, "It is not secret; it is sacred," as a way to limit information.
Wow.
And that's something classic. Anytime someone says to you, oh, you can't know this information, you're too stupid, or this is beyond you, or that's like red flag number one. But I like that phrase. It's not secret, it's sacred.
Oh my God.
So it's word salad stupidness.
It is. Yeah, it totally is. And that is a complete way of controlling the message. I don't need to tell you because this is sacred and you're not to the level.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's some Scientology bullshit right there.
Another really interesting thing is all this happened over Zoom. So again, here's this other cult, online internet cult that she was leading. And these people were following her. These men's groups, they were over Zoom where they were beating him up. And so they put him on this high, they love bombed him, put him on this high pedestal. And then they took it away from him. And then forever he was in that cycle to try and get it back. And all over Zoom. I mean, it's.
So he signed up. He got on these calls so he could be ostracized.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's that's the same thing with some of these other online groups that are high control. And it doesn't matter if it's on the internet or in person. We just think that on the internet, and these people, it is destroying their lives.
Yeah.
And
I mean, at least in person, there's this sense of, I guess in my mind, there's this sense of control because I'm in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And the internet, I can just hit a power button.
Yeah.
In my mind.
And that's the if you've never been in a cult, there's that logical, but that's the part that your brain completely gets shut off.
Mm-hmm.
That part of your brain is completely disassociated from reality. And so in our logical minds, it's like you can just hit a power button and walk away and you're fine. But that wasn't in the mental state that he was in.
No, he was past that point.
Yeah.
By a lot. Apparently, past that point. We are reading into this because we don't know his mental state of mind.
I'm viewing the situation through my lens from growing up in a cult.
Mm-hmm. And what you're saying makes sense to me. It makes sense to me. Because the parts that I was in, the parts of my life that shaped, who I am is different. Like, I think we kind of got to the same point, but through different processes, So mine was more of just effed up stuff that have occurred in my life and relationship issues, et cetera, et cetera. So I do have a different standpoint on what he would have gone through. Where my standpoint is with him is not so much the cult you can't leave sort of thing. It's this willingness to please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? So if that was his mental state even to begin with, and that's what I'm curious about, how were there years before the YouTube channel?
I think he did everything to please her. The whole YouTube channel, the whole sending their child away to one of those education camps, the disciplining, he just put that all on her and she ran with it.
And accepted
it. So he realizes now he was in a cult. He realizes that he's part of Crazy Town. And one of the investigators said to him, well, this is where you can relate to your son who was brutally abused, where the son was saying he had confessed to things that he had never done. And so did Kevin. Kevin confessed. And that's what Jodi required, that they would confess to things that they had never done as part of this indoctrination.
Oh, interesting.
Wow. There's so many layers to this story. I think there's going to be so many books written about it, and it's just going to go deeper and deeper and deeper. I hope somebody writes a book about that Pam lady, because we want to know who Pam is and the pen papers. Pam and the pen papers.
It's just this story seems so familiar to me. From dealing with.
Completely. So that's, sorry to cut you off.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly like the daybells.
Right.
And that's going to be our next episode, because the daybell court case is going to start April 1st, 2024. And then that's going to be our next one. So what's so interesting, the parallel between the two of them is this one, it's the same core beliefs. You can be a prophet. Children are evil. You can be inspired to create prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
You can commune with the dead. All these same type of Mormon beliefs.
The only thing we're missing is that the man is the king of the house.
Right.
That's the only difference between these two, as far as the underlying foundation. There's a ton of stuff on top of that is different, but the core underlying, the only thing different is the concept that the man is the king, of the house and in control of the house.
Mm-hmm.
Where it seems like in this case, she became the man of the house.
Mm-hmm. She did. And, well, in the daybell, and I've heard comparison, in the daybell case, it ended in the tragic loss in life. And
they were close.
This was headed in that direction. Absolutely headed in that direction. They were planning on buying property in Arizona, completely away from any eyes of anybody. And they were going to take all of the children there, and they probably were going to get other children to go to this area.
Mm-hmm.
And
For the re-education.
Right. And if they were evil, so again, not again, but they're dehumanizing these children, saying they're like they did in the daybell situation by calling them zombies. They're dehumanizing these children. And they were headed in that direction. The thing about the daybells is that they were just this small little weird group of weirdos, maybe 10 of them. And there couldn't be more than 10, and they were mainly related by family.
Right.
This with Jodi and Ruby, it was far-reaching because it was internet-based. It touched a lot more people. So the potential for way more harm was there with this Jodi connections.
Right.
More than it was with the daybells.
So if it wasn't for that one kid kind of escaping, this probably would still be going on.
It would still be going on, and it would have led to much more tragic ending. There's no doubt in my mind it was headed in the same way the daybells were.
Do you think the police in the area are just like, what the hell's up with the Mormons here?
Well, that's where...
they all are Mormons, aren't they?
Jeff Warren's was like in that same area. It's like, oh my God. It's so gross. It's just so gross.
Yeah. And like I said, it's your whole belief system is serving this up on a platter.
Yeah, exactly. You're serving crazy on a platter.
Mm-hmm.
The minute you say you can talk to God and you can have prophecy, and yeah, you're just feeding the crazies. And Jodi was definitely mentally ill. Like, she definitely had some problems. I mean, she's in a thruple with Satan and Jesus. I don't know. It might be kind of.
I don't know. Have you seen the paintings of? Have you seen the paintings of Satan? He's hot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a famous statue, and I'm not good with the names, but the Vatican wanted a statue of Satan, and so this sculptor put Satan, and it was close to erotic.
Well.
Yeah. And so they're like, no, thank you. So they went to another sculptor and they said, we want a statue of Satan, and it was hotter than the first.
It was sexier than
it was sexier. I mean, he had the gutters, so.
There you go. I just can't get out of my head of the thruple with Jesus and Satan. It's just so funny. Long walks on the beach with Jesus and married to Satan.
But she's a prophet, so then what she says is true.
Yep, exactly. Exactly.
All you have to do is believe, and that is the low bar, is whether or not you believe.
And she got everyone in that mental state where they were constantly chasing their tails and trying to gain favor. Everyone was trying to gain favor. She did everything classic. She was the classic cult leader. In every absolute way, which is hysterical. So when it comes to Ruby Franke, some of the evidence is really interesting too, because when she was arrested, oh my God, she looked like she was going to kill someone. Like, when you do something to your mom, when I get so angry because someone like breaks my shit.
Yeah.
Like, that's how she looked. Like, someone had just broken all of her stuff and she was gonna whoop some asses. Like, she was so angry. And
but this is the woman that was abusing her children.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So they get her and she refuses to speak to the investigators. Refuses to speak to them. She just looks at them with absolute disdain.
Because how dare you? Break up my three.
No. This is the other one, not the thruple lady. So when the thruple lady was arrested, she started crying, and then she immediately started lying.
So that's the mom. The thruple lady is the mom,
no,
not the mom. Okay.
Not the mom.
The manipulator.
The cult leader.
The cult leader. Got it now. Got it. Okay.
So she.
The mom was the one that was sat there angry, pissed off because
she was being arrested. So what that tells me, and I know a lot of people don't agree with this, and I feel like I'm the only one out there. People are saying, "Oh, she's an Oscar-winning actress." I don't. Okay, maybe she's a manipulator too. She's got to be a manipulator. You have to have some sense of power manipulation to have that many followers on YouTube. So, yes, probably. But what that tells me is that she believed 100% in what she was doing.
Yep.
Similar to crazy Lori Vallow Daybell, who believed it 100%.
Yep.
And still today believes in the crazy. Yep. So I'm so interested in the Chad Daybell case as it comes up, because I want to know, does he still believe in the crazy? Because I have the feeling that he's like Jodi.
Yeah.
He knows. So Jodi was arrested.
I'm pretty sure he does from the story we heard about him. But yeah. That'd be interesting to see what he says at trial.
So, or if he says anything, but at least at sentencing, hopefully they put him to death, but he'll say something. So Jodi immediately starts crying and immediately starts lying. And Ruby is like...
Let me guess. Was she blaming the other woman for all the issues, or?
She was blaming the children and lying, saying that there was nothing there.
Oh my God.
So the phone call from prison from the mom, I'll just call her the mom because that'll be easier for you to follow.
Thank you.
It's like so many moving parts here. So the mom is on the phone call, and I don't know if she's talking to her husband or she's talking to her sister or who she's talking to, but she explains how she woke up. And this completely makes sense to me. So she was spouting her nonsense, and she even said, I was talking about how I was so the children are evil and people don't understand that.
Right.
And my lawyer looked at me and said, "Do you believe that?"
Yeah.
And the lawyer said to her, "Jodi is saying this lie."
Mm-hmm.
And she said this lie. And at that point, you could hear it. She realized that she had messed up, that she had fallen for it hook, line, and sinker, and believed everything, had the inclination, had that critical point in her life where she was messed up, and then allowed Jodi to completely take mental, financial, everything advantage of her.
Yeah. I mean,
and it was her lawyer.
You were sleeping with her. And I'm not, I don't know if it was sexually, but you were literally sleeping in the same bed with her. I mean, that's weird.
It's weird. And then
I would have been better if they were sleeping having sex with each other. That would make more sense to me than just we're in the same bed but not having sex. It's kind of like, man, she really took over.
She did. She took over their lives. And it was the lawyer that made her see how far she had been manipulated and abused, and
that's crazy.
And made her realize how far she had sunk to the level.
The lawyer speaking the truth.
Yeah. It really just by asking questions and then saying, well, that's not what Jodi's saying.
Well, and also probably putting it into a point where she's not in the room with her.
Mm-hmm. She said that too. She was like being separated from her voice.
Yep.
And the lawyer actually asking her questions. And that's important for people who are trying to help other people out of cults. Mm-hmm. It's really good just to ask questions. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's the way that she described it was the lawyer said, really?
Really?
Because you have to hear yourself talk when it's not being echoed back to you all the time, and you're in this echo chamber. So
the Pavlovian response, you get that feedback, that positive feedback loop, right? And then your brain gets used to it, and then all of a sudden it's not there anymore, and it's like a cut.
Well, and
That's interesting.
That's the cult I was raised in. They had us doing work every single day.
You could never stop to think.
You could never stop to think.
Right.
And a lot of times when people would go to be more holy than everyone else, and they would go to be where they were learning another language. And when they couldn't understand the words
Mm-hmm.
and they were forced to step back, that's when they woke up.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about that.
Because
Isn't that an interesting concept?
It's this keeping you busy because you have to prove your love. You have to. It's always about you have to prove. You have to prove yourself
Mm-hmm.
to the leader. You have to prove yourself, and you never can. It's never enough. No matter what you do, it's never enough.
Well, and I mean, if you're a cult leader, you're never going to say, "Oh yeah, no, you're good."
No, never, ever. You want them completely because you don't want anyone to stop and think.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of cult leaders, they believe all that stuff too. So they want you to do more. And
again,
and it's about money or free
right.
labor or whatever it is.
Usually power.
And power. Yeah.
I mean, but power, money, it's all the same.
What do they say in the daybell? Money, sex, and power. That's what it was. Money, sex, and power. I love that because they are such holier than thou, especially the Lori Daybell woman. She just makes my skin crawl because she reminds me of my mother.
Yeah.
But Ruby Franke reminds me of my mother too. And I'm going to say this again, like I said last time. If my mother apologized the way that Ruby Franke apologized, it would give me a little bit of healing and solace. She would never do that.
Yeah.
My mother would never do that. So it just in that aspect, many people are saying she's faking it. I think that's a good YouTube stance to say she's faking it. But I feel like she realized and she woke up. And maybe she is. Maybe she's playing the whole system.
Well, you think about, the daybells, right? And that she has now been separated from him, but she hasn't woken up.
No.
So it's not
as crazy as she ever was.
Yeah. But she, if I remember correctly, was crazy even inside the Mormon church. Like the Mormons were like, "You're too crazy for us. You need to leave."
Mm-hmm.
So you can see that like that's a much sharper turn than Ruby, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So where Ruby seemed more like, I'm getting this positive feedback of this YouTube channel, and then I lost it, and now I'm building it back again, and you could see that is more of like a mentality of, I'm trying to do the best that I can in the worst way possible.
Right.
So that I can see the difference where one was embedded to begin with. And so her being removed is now just reinforcing her belief. Where Ruby Franke's like, I'm separated now, and now I'm not hearing this constant noise. Now I actually have time to think and realize what has come up. So that does make a lot of sense to me, that where one would be like stoic and no, you guys are wrong, and this is all true, and the other one being, holy shit, what have I done?
Right. Yeah. There's no way to, we're just outside looking in, and I look at everything from the lens of being in a cult for 25 years. So my perspective is very different than most other people's perspective. And my mom is 100% Lori Vallow. 100. My mother would be on that stand talking about how much she loves God and whatever. And
how much her children were the problem. And
exactly. And would never wake up like that.
Yeah.
Like, apparently, Ruby Franke did.
Yeah. But she has nowhere to wake up to. How do you wake up from yourself?
Yeah.
Like, do cult leaders wake up from themselves? That's actually a really good question. Has a cult leader ever stopped one day and went, oh crap, I think I'm a cult leader. I need to stop this.
I think I've seen a YouTube where a couple of them have said, "Oh wow, this is heading in the wrong direction. I need to change
different.
this."
No, that's different. I'm talking about embedded. I'd be willing to bet that there's probably that happens 1,000 times a day. Where someone goes, "Whoa, this is getting weird," and just backs up. I'm talking about dyed in the wool cult leader, where they have followers,
and then woke up,
and then just went, "Whoa, hey, do you think we're the bad guys here?"
I don't know. The Mormons have not come off as good people. I mean, this has not been good. This has not been a good couple of years for the Mormons.
Have they ever had a time where everybody just went, they're normal?
No, yeah, they've always had their crazies.
Yeah, just from like Sherlock Holmes, the guy that wrote Sherlock Holmes, Conan Doyle, he wrote that whole story about how crazy Mormons were back then.
Mm-hmm.
And he was specifically talking about the founders of Mormonism. So this wasn't like, oh, they've been around for 100 years and they're a little crazy. He's talking about from the very beginning, they were crazy.
Yeah. And
everything that I, read about, his story, there's nothing at the end of it going, no, that was not, he's just using his literary devices on this. Now, I think he wrote a biography in a story form.
Yeah. Yeah.
For the Mormons.
I think so too.
Yeah. It's crazy shit.
Yeah. Well, and as crazy as the pen papers, and I have to create a YouTube video on who this Pam person is. I really do. Because I'm just like, who is she? Because she was in the room when they were writing these documents.
Right.
She's the president of Connections. When they went looking for the additional children, they found them at her house.
Yeah.
She was never arrested. She's never put on trial. So why?
Yeah.
There's also part of the whole Lori Vallow ecosphere. There's another woman who attempted murder on her ex-husband who's never been charged. So there's like these outliers in these stories that I'm so interested in.
And they could be a separate investigation too.
Yeah.
So there could be ongoing investigations of those two where these two are like, we've got the evidence and, they're both pleading guilty. So, it's kind of done and done on that point. So the other two, it might be more complicated and like we know there's something going on, but we don't have immediate proof. So we've got to get more information on them.
Yeah, this goes back to when you're in a cult and you do bad stuff to people to gain favor, and it's hard to prosecute. I don't know. Anyway, so all of that came out. A lot of stuff came out, but if we ever get the pen papers, maybe we'll do another podcast.
Oh, that'd be interesting too.
About those.
We should read them.
Oh yeah, I want to.
On the podcast.
Well, they're going to be scripture, so.
Yeah, it's just religious doctrine.
I don't know. I'm super jealous about the thruple still.
Oh, well, something I was thinking of is, do you know what got me about, do you remember the fake Mormon document?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Back in the 80s?
Yeah, that's such a great story. Yeah.
Right?
They're called the salamander.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. And so a little bit of history is that there was documentation that the scriptures for Mormonism were handed down from a salamander to, what's his butt?
Joseph Smith.
Joseph Smith. And that they had this evidence written from him that said, yes, this is where I got my information from. What kills me about this story isn't the salamander reference. That's funny.
The oxalotl.
Yeah. It was the fact that people believed it was true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That nobody said, no, that couldn't happen. Right? So if we found this book in like, in the cave next to where we found the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it had a scripture in there that said, and thus Jesus walked out into the water and spoke with an aardvark, and the aardvark told him he was God. I don't think there'd be people that'd be like believing that. They'd be like, okay, this is obviously a fake because that's cray cray. You know, like, I don't care. Like, there's some crazy stuff in the Bible, but, you know, a lot of it is grounded on other beliefs and stories and stuff like that. So there is some basis to historical truth. But it comes out on Mormonism that he got his information from a salamander, and everybody went, that could be right. And yes. we need to not let this get out.
Yeah.
So it's like that right there. That is a red flag, you know, if you've ever seen one, is that a salamander could be correct information handed down by your prophet.
Yeah. All kinds of crazy. A good documentary, though. That was a really good
documentary.
Really good documentary. Yeah. Like, one of the best cult documentaries was the salamander bombing craziness that happened.
Yeah. If you guys haven't seen it, you guys definitely need to check it out.
All right. I think that's the end. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe. And see you next time.
All right.